Hey everyone, how's it going today, and welcome back to another update. So the big idea today's update is that maybe one great news to share is that we officially have information from Congress that they are now officially back onto the table to start negotiations once again. The big update is that in one of the previous updates, what was really going on is that they were just select politicians that were coming back. For example, we mentioned how Biden is back, then Joe Manchin was kind of slowly coming back to the table. But the great news is that as of the end of this week, the entirety of Congress, pretty much every single person there, is now officially back in session. So in today's update, what I really want to do is just send a brand new information talking really about where we currently stand, of course, with fourth stimulus checks and fourth stimulus package. I want to talk a little bit about how our country is just doing collectively as a whole, because it is something that once again is going to relate to stimulus checks and stimulus package. Maybe a brief amount about unemployment. And then really the big thing is also about what Joe Manchin and Krysten Sinema specifically actually wants and what is actually predicted to physically be inside of this package. So of course, hopefully by the end, it's going to make a lot more sense, so definitely stay tuned for that. So we're going to get rolling, but as always, real fast, before we begin, consider smashing the like button if you guys hopefully enjoy videos like this, or you guys can wait till the end to decide, but it is always greatly appreciated. Consider subscribing and hitting the bell for similar videos, and as always, feel free to comment any questions, maybe personal thoughts about everything that's been happening right now, or honestly, just really anything. Always great to hear from you guys. So with that being said, let's get this video started. So to maybe start a little bit about the background story to how we're really doing as a country, because it is very, very important, is that as most of you guys know, probably by now, or if not now know, is that inflation right now are at very, very record highs. And it's just the straightforward answer. It's not very good. We'll just put it at that. And the reason why it's very, very scary, aside from the fact that prices are going to go up, is that because it also means that as prices go up, it is very probable right now that businesses may start to struggle, not because they're not able to necessarily make money per se, although that is partially true, but because if their expenses start to go up, it also means that it might potentially cut into their profit margin. Now, if that ends up happening, the biggest fears is that it's going to now create kind of a chain effect, which is a little bit more of an in-depth thing. Maybe we'll talk about in a future video. But essentially the synopsis and the idea is that if the prices really start to get out of hand, then businesses really start to potentially struggle. It becomes a lot more difficult to make a living, especially with all of the increased cost. And then what's going to happen is that potentially now it's very probable that if many companies start to struggle, they may have to start to cut employees. And this is the part that maybe relates to unemployment, because unemployment right now is actually admittedly at a record low. Now, there is a lot of just speculation to how accurate a lot of these numbers are. Feel free to share, but the big idea is that regardless of what it is, it's very fair to say whether unemployment is very high, or in this case, according to statistics, it's very, very low. If all of this stuff was to happen, we might start to see a resurge of it again, and then now a potential need for just simply put benefits, or just simply put the fact that if more people become unemployed, then at least there's going to be something that is probably going to need to catch some attention, hopefully by a lot of people inside of Congress. But the big idea is that we're kind of in a very, very unstable moment, and I think hopefully we can all agree is that more help can definitely just, as the word suggests, just help a lot of people to really be able to hopefully recover and make those finishing touches back. Now, to maybe talk a little bit about fourth stimulus checks and fourth stimulus package, is that the really great news, as we just mentioned, is that now Congress is collectively as an entire squad, they are now back onto the table, ready to start negotiations and talks once again, but again, as an entire unit. But to maybe try to specify about what we currently know, because Joe Manchin and Krysten Sinema have both actually already started to casually speak out about what they actually physically want. This here pretty much just highlights a little bit of details about what Joe Manchin wants. But the story with Joe Manchin right now is that there are really only 3 policies that he really, really wants to focus his time over. The first is pretty much about tax reform, so everything related to taxes. The second is about prescription drug prices. And the third is all about energy and climate change. For the tax side of things, he's specifically stated, and I guess the good news is at least we have very specific numbers, objectively speaking now, to work with. He wants to raise the corporate tax from 21 to 25%. He also wants to raise the capital gains tax from 23.8% to 28%. So that's about a 4% increase in the corporate tax, about a little bit over a 4% increase to the capital gains tax. Again, this is really about people that might be investing in the stock market or any kind of like typical investment that, as the name suggests, is that you're getting taxed because of selling investments, and that's why it's called capital gains. And then interestingly, another one doesn't really have a number to it, but he pretty much just wants to try to tighten up the restrictions to make it so that it's a lot harder to find loopholes to get away with paying taxes. So the big idea is that the first policy is pretty much that he just wants to increase taxes, which is something that's actually very uniform across most of the people in the Democratic Party, because by increasing taxes, they're able to have more money and then try to work on doing a lot of social programs. So things such as like stimulus, unemployment, child tax credit, everything like that. Now, one not so good news, admittedly, is that even though Joe Manchin does support trying to raise up the taxes to raise money, the part that they actually really do disagree on, sadly, is about what they actually physically want to do with the money. There are many people in Congress that are now starting to speak out, such as like AOC, or have been speaking out, like AOC is an example, Bernie Sanders is an example, Ro Khanna is another example. They want to try to take that money. So they're actually on the same side with Joe Manchin in terms of raising taxes. But the difference is about what they actually want to do with that money. Over on the AOC, Ro Khanna, Bernie Sanders, and that pretty much entire side, most of the Democratic Party, more or less, they want to take that money and potentially try to use it to create all sorts of different programs. And this would include things like stimulus checks, unemployment, child tax credit, definitely child tax, because that was one of the biggest programs and the most recent of the stimulus programs that we talked about. Social Security, pandemic boost, EBT, all that stuff related. However, for Joe Manchin's side, the not so good news is that even though he does want to raise taxes, he does want to raise up money, he wants to use that money specifically to pay off a lot of the debt inside of this country. So there's a little bit of a contrast approach to it. Now, there is also another, maybe just not so good news, or certainly we'll just say a disagreement that's going on, is going to be on the third side, which is Krysten Sinema. So we have the Democratic Party within Congress, or at least most of them. We have Joe Manchin, and we have Krysten Sinema. Now, Krysten Sinema is a little bit more vague about what she currently wants, but one thing that she has stated that she does not want is to increase taxes. So there's already a little bit of a divide there. She hasn't really given as much details about what she wants. So, if you've ever worked with, I don't know, a relationship, a customer, a person, sometimes you might have a situation where, you always have those people that they don't seem happy, but they don't really say anything, so you don't know why they're not happy, so you kind of just have to take it what it is. And again, this is something you might even see in your regular life. Sometimes people will, develop a grudge if they're just not happy about something, but they don't really give the specific details. Except the sad thing is that in this situation, it's actually important, because in this situation, all of the people inside have to pretty much, as some of you guys pretty much know by now, they have to be on the same board in order to try to get this package through. If they are not able to get Joe Manchin or Krysten Sinema through, they're going to potentially have to get some Republicans through, or, as we mentioned, is a potential executive order. But there are limitations to it. We did talk a little bit about the executive order side, and I believe actually literally the last update, which also I guess I'll put at the very, very end screen. If you guys haven't checked out, it's on the lower part. It just talks about one special way that they can potentially approve certain programs, because there's limitations to it. But there are definitely things that they can definitely physically do in order to try to be able to get this through. So hopefully this kind of just paints what's been going on and what they actually physically want in Congress with Joe Manchin and then with Krysten Sinema. Now, outside of all of this stuff, there is one part that they also are actually trying to work on, and it is kind of like a stimulus thing, but they do want to also try to work on approving some pandemic aid. So there is a part of the package that has, like, you know, aid for state and local government, but they also want to approve some of that money separately. So basically twice. They want to approve it separately, and then they want to put it together. I believe right now they're looking to try to fund about $10 billion worth of pandemic aid. What this money is going to be used to do is pretty much to do everything related to making those finishing touches to finally recover from everything with the pandemic, and hopefully to finally be able to move on. Now, within this money, maybe one good news is that they're going to potentially send some of it to local states, and there are also actually many states that already do have their own stimulus checks. I believe there's another video that we talked about it, but if they're able to send money to those particular places, then it's very probable that maybe if you come from a state that has a governor that's hopefully generous and believes in a lot of social programs, they might potentially be able to do stimulus specifically just for their own people. And again, if you come from a big state, we are talking about over 1 million, if not a couple million people. So this is not a small town. This is actually a lot of people that can potentially get helped during a time of a lot of need that's still happening out there. But beyond this is that that's pretty much most of what I really wanted to share. Maybe the only last thing really to cover is about the timeline, which is the fact that right now inside of Congress, even though they are now officially back for negotiations, one of the biggest things to notice is that there's probably going to be only about 12 active weeks left for them to try to approve a package. It's not necessarily because there's 12 weeks just, you know, in general, but what it is because after 12 weeks, it's going to take us in to right around like the end of August, including the vacation. So, you know, or not including the vacation. So as in 12 actual weeks that they're going to be in session. And the only story about it is that when they finally hit the very, very end of the summer into the beginning of next season, so fall and autumn, what's probably going to happen is that they're now going to have to turn their focus to really focus on trying to work on the midterm elections. Everything related to that, so the campaigns, gaining support as much as they can. So the one thing about it is that if something were to go through, we don't know, you know, what's going to happen. There's no guarantees. But if something was to potentially go through, it's going to have to happen in over the next 3 to 4 months, but the next 12, so about the next 3 active months of actual work that they're going to be in session. Because keep in mind, you know, they're going to be off for a week for July 4. They're going to be off for a summer break later on. They're going to be off for Labor Day weekend or Labor Day week, because again, you know, what we celebrate over a weekend, they celebrate over a week. But the idea is that kind of really hopefully just paints a picture about the time frame when we can expect each of these things to happen. But with that being said, now that pretty much is really what I wanted to cover in today's update. So if you guys hopefully found it insightful and haven't done so, maybe consider smashing the like button, consider subscribing, hitting the bell, and as always, feel free to comment any questions, thoughts about honestly anything. If you're watching this on release date, have a great rest of April 2022, and hope to see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much again.